Friday night. I didn't feel like going out. My cat, Evie, and I were alone. 9:30. Nothing exciting to watch on the telly, so I made a mug of tea and ran an uncharacteristically early bath. The delicious sounds of Santana Smooth, a bath bomb, steamy tea, and an even steamier bathroom. My idea of heaven. Stepping into the bath, I noticed that Evie had followed me into the bathroom. She sassied past me, her shoulders doing that "I'm so fabulous, I don't even deign to look at you" type of thing, to sit in her usual spot on the wash basin, from where to survey her kingdom. I was grateful for her visit, naturally, and as she glided past, dabbed a dollop of bath foam on the tip of her undulating tail, which seemed forever to be shaped like a question mark. As expected, her long-winded protestations were way out of proportion to the crime. But having reached her goal, her vocalizations turned, despite having reached the ripe old age of 5, into pleading, high-pitched, kitten-like mews, which always had the desired effect on me. I turned on the tap so that she could drink from the stream of running water. Leaving her to it, I laid back and closed my eyes, tried to relax, and breathed in the fragrant bath aromas, made somehow more potent by the steam and the smaller dimensions of the room. In the background, Santana continued to remind of steamy hot summer days, somewhere exotic and far away from the cold, rainy London. I don't remember thinking of anything especially. I was aware it had become my habit over the past few months to think of nothing in particular. But whether there were thoughts in my mind or not, they were cut short as I became aware that Evie had stopped drinking water. She sat, apparently transfixed by something on the back of the half-open door. At first I thought perhaps she was enthralled by a fly or some other insect. Unusual to find one flying about in the winter, but as I couldn't see anything, I trusted her sharper eyesight. Just about to close my eyes again and let her get on with it, I realized she was wearing her familiar expression for particularly exciting playtimes, tail tip a quiver, betraying extreme excitement, neck craned forward, ears focused and on full alert, and wild anticipation reflected in dark, dilated pupils, all indicated that the game had already begun. I followed her eye line, but again, saw nothing. It was, however, easy to see where the playmate was, because she was looking up at the door and then down at her body, as her new friend apparently moved towards and away from her, and side to side and back up again. This went on for quite some time, which gave me ample opportunity to observe the strangeness. At some point, the playmate even seemed to have contemplated getting into the bath with me, but nothing happened, and I felt much relieved. By now I was getting slightly spooked, because it was very clear that she was actually responding to something or someone in there with us. But whoever or whatever it was must have left the bathroom rather suddenly and taken with them the excitement, because the next minute Evie shot through the half-open door like an arrow from a bow, keen to continue their game. Knowing her relentlessness when it came to the game, I felt almost sorry for them, whoever they were. I could hear her running about wildly in the living room and up and down the corridor. It seemed a far better game than I had ever played with her. She came rushing back into the bathroom, and for a few moments the game continued around the door before she dashed off again towards the living room, the sounds of her tiny paws on the wooden floor magnified by her eagerness, leaving minute squeals of excitement and delight in her trail. Sudden regret made me swallow hard. I hadn't played with her in months. I finished my bath, and somehow a deep sense of peace and rightness washed over me, momentarily lifting the heavy sadness I'd been carrying in my heart and in my body over the last few months. I was aware that I was going through my usual ritual of brushing my teeth, rubbing in body lotion, putting on my pyjamas, climbing into bed and turning on my Kindle. But this night, it felt as though it was happening to somebody else. Meanwhile, Evie and her friend were having the time of their lives, noisily running all over the flat, their games clearly far too exciting to stop. The noise levels went up a few notches as the night became quieter. The game continued all night and included several mad dashes across the bed, where in my half-awake, half-asleep state, I became gradually aware of another set of running feet, heavier, bigger, and another bigger, heavier body tumbling over the bed. But at some point, the manic running around at least became interspersed with moments of quiet, when it felt as though both Evie and her friend were content to rest on the bed with me for a while. I must have drifted off to sleep eventually, because the game was still in full flow, I realized, when I awoke the next morning, and it continued all through getting ready to teach the first singing lesson of the day. Evie, with her beautiful Bengali patterns, numerous eccentricities and strong character, despite the fact that she was one of the smallest, most petite cats I'd ever seen, was adored by all of my students. They regularly spoiled her with outrageous gifts when her birthday or Christmas came along, and today was no exception. Neatly wrapped Christmas gifts, bearing little cat name tags for Evie, were scattered under our small tree, and my first student of the day, Simon, placed another there for her before the start of his lesson. Even though the lesson began in the usual way, it wasn't long before Evie's exuberance put a stop to the normal proceedings. Always a great student, this day, surprisingly, getting Simon to concentrate on the lesson proved beyond me. "Look," he kept interrupting our phrasing, "just look at Evie. She's playing with someone, but there's no one here." Or talking through one of my instructions. "Wow, she can jump so high. It looks like someone's making her jump with one of those cat stick things with the feathers at the front, doesn't it?" Evie was indeed still playing with her friend. The game must have been the best ever, because she hadn't asked for her breakfast yet, or pestered me to change her cat litter tray after having had the slightest pee in it, nor had she moaned about wanting to go to sleep on her special bed, which had to have her hot water bottle placed there before she could do so, and it was long past her normal time to do those things. I sighed. I had somehow to get through to Simon, because this was the last lesson before his exam. My energy levels were at rock bottom though, but simultaneously I felt enormous relief that he had also noticed Evie's unusual behaviour, because I had begun to wonder if grief had made me imagine it. I had to take into consideration the fact that Simon was only 16, but I could see only one way to recapture his attention. "Will you be freaked out if I tell you something very strange?" I asked. "No way. You know how much I love explosions and gory horror stories and stuff," he responded. "I can't be grossed out," he said confidently. It was true, I knew. He had been studying with me since he was 11, and during that time had written several deeply gory horror monologues for his classwork with me. "Okay, that's good. And it looks like our work on confidence building has paid off too," I said, only half joking. And for the first time, I told one of my students of the mysterious way in which my uber-talented dear friend and soul brother Stephen had died a few months earlier. I explained how we had auditioned parts of the script we had written for a talent agent who we hoped might help us to get it produced. We went out afterwards to celebrate, never imagining that we would be parted forever. I found out that Stephen had died the very next morning. He was 33. It didn't matter that people said he was the same age as Jesus when he died, or that Stephen had a kind of Christ consciousness. I knew they were trying to make me feel better, but he was gone, and unlike Jesus, he wasn't coming back after 3 days, and the cause of his death remained a mystery. I couldn't tell anyone that despite us not knowing each other for a very long time, and despite the fact that Stephen was gay and that we didn't have that kind of relationship, our connection was the most intense and deepest that I have ever experienced with another human being. I couldn't tell anyone that I had no inkling that I was capable of loving someone that much. I couldn't explain how all the colours in the world had disappeared until everything seemed to be only different shades of grey now that my beautiful, gregarious and colourful friend was no longer on the planet. I couldn't garner the strength and energy I needed to continue our work. Everything reminded me of him. Songs we listened to, songs he sang, songs I sang, words people said which reminded of the lines from our script. My diary was full of meetings and plans with him. Props from our work and half-edited scripts and ideas for new shows we were starting to work on were strewn around my office. Oh, I was given a lot of advice. Just throw yourself into work, that's the best thing. Don't worry, time will heal. You have to get a grip and move forward. Go to counselling, that'll help. Listen to his recordings, it will help desensitize you. Be grateful for all you still have left. Stephen wouldn't want you to be sad. Be grateful that you had him in your life at all. And of course, I was grateful that I had him in my life. But all I could think of was the uncanny similarity of what happened in our script, a two-hander, and of the lines he had written for me to say after the death of his character. I know I should feel grateful that I had your love, that I felt such love, but I'm not. I'm not grateful. I want more. You cheated me. Our time together was too short. I'm not convinced he knew he would die, but it was as though he had foretold what would happen through our script, which had been written months ago. It was so unexpectedly similar, what happened to him, even down to the time. The psychiatrist explained that because we weren't only friends, but because we worked so closely together, I couldn't escape into my work like others in a similar situation would be able to do, because it brought the pain back again and again each time I tried to work. She didn't offer a solution, and I didn't ask for one. But it was such an obvious statement, I couldn't believe that I hadn't thought of it myself. It helped me to understand the pain around my work, at least a little. I didn't tell any of those things to Simon, of course. Instead I said, I thought Evie's playmate might be Stephen, come to visit me. Cool! Simon's eyes were bright at the thought of an actual, real-life supernatural experience. The rest of his lesson went smoothly and without a hitch, especially as Evie stooped to validate his existence by rubbing against his legs a few times. But hearing my voice say the words out loud to Simon somehow made Stephen's passing finally real for me, as though voicing it made it a fact. That doesn't mean it made it easier, less painful. It just brought it closer to home. And perhaps that's why his visit became real then, too.